Welcome to yet another session of Dr. Spotfire. I am your host, Dr. Vishakha Mujju, and I have my colleague Divya Jyoti Rajdev here with me. We are really happy that you are kind of liking Dr. Spotfire sessions, and we see a lot of people continuously kind of sending us email queries as well. Once again, learning is not driven by answers, but by questions. We're here to help your journey for learning. So I have here today our guest speaker also. So this is our crew. I have Divya Jyoti Rajdev. We kind of have Minerva Datta, who does the post-processing for us, so that whatever we discuss, it gets kind of published, and it gets published with the comments and kind of a brief description of what the problem is there and how it was resolved. And we have Alexis also helping from he's our campaign architect. So that's the whole crew. And we have our guest speaker from Spotfire Technical Support. She's Senior Technical Support Engineer, Sayali Patil, and she will be talking about co-branding. So she will be kind of delivering a session about co-branding, where we see a lot of support queries coming up for that topic. She has been helping our customers since last 3.5 years. And other than Spotfire server administration, she also specializes in Iron Python scripting. And in her free time, she loves to read, especially autobiographies. She's also based out of Palo Alto. The whole crew is kind of based out of Palo Alto. So let's go ahead and start the session. So can you please provide the ball to Sayali so that she can start?
Vishakha, is my screen visible?
Yes.
It's good to be part of the Dr. Spotfire session, and this is my first time participating in this session. So today I'm going to talk about how we can use co-branding in Spotfire. So co-branding is basically used to customize the look and feel of Spotfire, the web player, the analyst client, and the Spotfire server, where we can replace the product name, logo, and some other things like the about dialog, the help URL, those of your company profile. So let's see how we can go about it. So the TIBCO product download, the TIBCO documentation site has a manual on the TIBCO Spotfire co-branding available, which can be used to get started with. So let me just bring up that manual. Here, if we see, there's a co-branding help available. So this co-branding help is elaborate, and it talks about each step that we need to perform. So to begin with, we have to first get this co-branding template, which is a XML file, which can be customized as per your need on what settings you need, and which you don't, you can eliminate. So these there is like we can customize the product names that you see in the analyst client and the web player. We can customize the banner in the analyst client. And the comments are also explanatory, and they specify what dimensions of the images should be used. If the image exceeds these dimensions, then those will be cropped. So we need to be careful that those images need to be of the perfect dimensions. And we can also customize the URLs that we see. So just to save time, I have already created a template file. Let me just bring that up. So here's my folder, and the file, my co-branding file is this. So I have specified I've created all the banner and the logo files, and specified it in this co-branding config file, and the corresponding images as well I have just placed in the same folder. So once we have all these images created, then we need to use the Spotfire package builder to create a SPK file. So the co-branding is also like a custom extension that can be created, but it doesn't need to be compiled through Visual Studio or anything like the normal custom extensions. We can just use here, we can just specify this folder where we have all the co-branding files, and we can browse to that folder, select the folder, and go back to that folder. And now it shows us all the images. And one important thing is this co-branding.config file, we need to specify a public resource name. Otherwise, co-branding would not take effect. So here we have already specified that. Since I already have my module.xml, this name is already set. So now click on next, and this is for any client because we want the change to be seen on the web player as well as the analyst client. So then we click on finish, and we can just click on validate and save. It says it is valid. So once it says it's valid, we can actually create a SPK file, and we can save that SPK file. So here I'm just saving my SPK file in this folder. So once this is saved, we can bring up our server and deploy this SPK file there. So let me just bring up a server which doesn't have any co-branding yet. So this is the default logos and images that we see. So then we need to go to this deployments and packages, and whichever deployment area you are currently using or which is the default one, you can just click on add packages and add that file here. So you can select this file, open, upload, and then you can click on validate and save. So this would take a bit of a time. So I already have one server where I have deployed this co-branding SPK file. So once the co-branding takes effect, these are the things that we would see. So here is the toolbar that is updated with this is called the web header.html file. So this is what is reflecting in here, and this is using this images folder. So this is the image that we see there, and this TIBCO text I've just added it to show where it will show up. So here is this TIBCO text. You can this is completely optional, so you can just ignore it if you don't need it. And this is the main logo. And now this is just the home page of the Spotfire server. So now if we want to see if it's taking effect on the analytics tab, we can actually go to the web player and load a report, and this logo continues to be there. So this is also like customizable. So I want to show you one other thing. So if I go to my other server and I just load a sample report. So here also you see this web header. So I just have enabled the default web header .html file. So it can be actually enabled in the web player Spotfire DXP worker web config, and this is the entry. So this is by default set to false. So I just set it to true to show you the difference. In case you don't want to use the entire, don't want to create the co-branding package, and you just want to enable this web header.html, we can actually export the configuration. So let me just show you the simple steps how you can just export the configuration. Here I have just exported the web player configuration. Once it exports the configuration, we see the web player files here. So I just went and modified this web player file to enable the custom header. So if we have co-branding and custom header both, the co-branding precedes, like takes effect, it overrides this setting, and the web header.html that we specify in the co-branding would take effect. So here I have enabled this custom header. And that is why, and then once we enable that, I've just imported this configuration, and that is my active configuration here. So if I close this, so once you, if you want to see the change on the web player after you make any changes to the configuration, that needs to be set as the active configuration. So here I have set this as the active configuration. So this is how we can use co-branding in Spotfire. So let me just briefly talk about the most common issues we come across when we are using co-branding. So the most, so if you see, all the image files here are PNG with extension PNG. So the only supported extension is PNG. If we try to use JPG or BMP, then Spotfire would just ignore those files. So co-branding would not take effect. The other thing is, if there is some invalid tag, or if we forget to close some tag, then the co-branding file would not be parsed by Spotfire. So again, it would not take effect. And the most important thing is, to switch on the co-branding, we need to specify the public resource name. If Spotfire doesn't find this co-branding.config public resource name, then it wouldn't take effect. And in the, if you check the log, you would see a message saying co-branding is switched off. So that's when you know that we are missing this co-branding.config. And one other thing I forgot to show you, how it would look in the Spotfire Analyst client, the co-branding. So this is my portable client. So if you see, okay, let me just log in. Sorry, I logged on to the wrong server. Let me change that.
So I have also shared the links about co-branding, the package builder from the documentation on the chat panel.
Yeah, and we also have a video for which Vishakha has shared the link on how to use the package builder. So now here by default we don't, now this is showing up because we've used co-branding here. And also the about links. So if you see here, this is called my about box because we are using co-branding here. And this logo also shows up here. And these URLs also are customized URLs. So for analyst client, this is what we can customize in the through the co-branding. One other thing is not many customers might be aware of, is that the help links that we see here, these are also, these can be customized, and by default they point to the online documentation. So we can also point them to the offline documentation in case your Spotfire server, in case there is no internet access on the machine where we are browsing this admin URL and somebody needs to access the help. So here I have, this is my custom help that is showing up. I have deployed this in IIS website, and the default page I've set it to index.html, which Spotfire looks for. So this can be customized in the Spotfire server configuration, and Vishakha would share the link for it. It's called the help base URL. So let me just, so here this is set to true by default, which tells Spotfire that it should go and get the online documentation. If we want to use a custom URL, then we can specify it via a help base URL and set this to false. So then it would use the custom URL. And this is for Spotfire server. And similarly, we can set the help URL for the analytics tab. So here, when we go to the analytics, say we have loaded a report and we want to browse the help here. So we can actually, so this user's guide, if you want to customize the user's guide, some customers have their own version of this user's guide where they want to add additional details, or they want to have their own PDF files or HTML files, then they this is a customized one. So we can actually customize this as well, and that can be done through the web player configuration. So Vishakha would share the link for that too, and any change we need to make in the web player configuration, the same steps need to be followed. We need to export the configuration, we need to make the change, we need to import the configuration, and then we need to set it as the active configuration on the web player. So hopefully this was useful, and please reach out in case you have any questions related to co-branding.
So Sayali, I have a quick question. So what are the common problems kind of you see? I heard you saying about that web player service is not running. Are there any common things which you see in terms of co-branding that you get on the support tickets?
Yeah. So if the co-branding is not taking effect on the web player, say you don't see this toolbar on the web player at all. So the most common thing that might be the case, the issue might be that this web player service, it's not updated. So whenever we make, whenever we deploy something in this deployment area, the co-branding package, we need to go and update this web player service, because it wouldn't know about the co-branding module that is newly deployed unless we update the service. So once we have something deployed, this more actions button would get enabled, and we need to do this update service and migrate service. So update service would actually get the new module. Update service would actually create a new service, and with the new module, the co-branding module, and migrate service would migrate this existing instance under the new service. So we can get rid of this service. We can actually delete this service, and then the co-branding would take effect. And the other common scenario is not using PNG file extensions, not using the right dimensions of the file, and in case some tag is missing, then the co-branding wouldn't take effect. And on Linux, we need to install, if your Spotfire server is on Linux and you want to use the co-branding there, then you need an additional package. You need an additional utility called give me a second, I don't remember what it is called. Yeah, so cab extract. So this is what needs to be installed on Linux. If this utility is not installed, then the co-branding Spotfire would not be able to recognize the co-branding cab file. It would not, this utility is like a unzip utility where it unzips the co-branding package. So in case this is not installed, then Spotfire, then the co-branding will not take effect. So these are the most common scenarios we've come across, Vishakha.
Okay, thank you so much. So this is our another way to kind of help Dr. Spotfire sessions, because most of the questions which we cannot take up in a particular session, we kind of forward them to support, and Spotfire support has been helping a lot, and we want to kind of educate our customers with the most common problems we see on support, and a lot of customers asking similar questions. So we will be having occasionally a featured presentation from Spotfire support, where they can kind of help us with certain topics they see more. So please provide us feedback on how we should continue with these sessions and how we can add more to it. So Sayali, can you just pass me the ball so that we can start today's questions?
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, Vishakha, I'll pass you the ball. Give me a second.
So while we are waiting, if you have any questions, feel free to post it. Feel free to ask your questions. And when you are posting your questions on community, make sure you are kind of using the tag as Dr. Spotfire. We still don't see people kind of using the tag as Dr. Spotfire. So that makes it easier for us to include those questions for upcoming Dr. Spotfire sessions. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So, okay. So these are the set of questions I will be kind of taking up. I did not see many tags as Dr. Spotfire. They would be the ones we will pick. So I mostly picked the questions which were kind of not answered. So if there was a reply, I did not pick that question. So it was completely kind of random selection this time. And this is the first question. So before I start, this is how earlier I used to kind of use a notepad, but now what I found easy was, instead of using a notepad, this HTML page. So it's simply like, if it was not there, so let me close it. I can add an I can add a web page. All I have to do is I have to edit and I have to provide the link. So it kind of uses my Internet Explorer to kind of render it, and I'm able to kind of see that the community web page within my Spotfire DXP5. So this is the first question. The visualization I'm trying to create is divided into data table and a KPI. All are based on a single table. Is there a way to use the KPI chart to mark the data on the table display, meaning when I click on the KPI, the relevant rows in the table get marked? So what I did on the right-hand side is I have just simply created a KPI chart, not like any customized KPI chart or anything. So, and this is the KPI chart. I can quickly show you how I created it. It's just, I just picked insert visualization, picked my data table, and created a KPI chart. By default, it kind of ended up like this. It showed me median electronics by each month. And then I created a data table, which is this data table. Now, you can see I did not have to do anything to make that marking show. The moment I click on January, by default, it kind of marks the January month. The moment I click on Feb, it kind of marks the rows corresponding to Feb. Now, your KPI is basically, the way I understand is, your KPI would be something which would be related to your data table. And when you highlight something here, you want that to be displayed, those kind of rows to be marked, and everything comes from a data table. Now, how this works at the background, so let me close this. Let me say I don't have anything. I insert a visualization, I insert a KPI chart. So let's say I have this KPI chart which shows me each location: Boston, Los Angeles, New York, Seattle. And I insert a table also. Now, if you click here, you can see it automatically marks. The reason, because whatever is the marking here by default, that's the marking here as well. So by default, that feature is already part of your Spotfire. But usually what I see is, like, I don't want to kind of, I want to just see Boston. I don't want to see everything else. So what I can do here is I can go to properties, I can go to data, I can say, okay, use some other marking color and limit by the green marking. So what it does is, when I pick my Los Angeles KPI, it only shows me the data belonging to Los Angeles. It does not show me other 4 locations. If I pick up both of them, so if I pick up multiple locations, it kind of will show me multiple locations. So that's the default behavior. So whenever you have something where you want to create something like a data drill down, there are various options in properties. One is this data limiting. So you can limit data by marking. Marking can be in any visualization, and it will limit. Then you can also kind of, if you go to other visualizations like a bar chart, you can create a filtering scheme. You can create an expression by which you can limit your data. You can create a subset. Again, that subset could be based on all data. Maybe my all data versus just my KPI. So if I want that way, I want all data versus the current filtering, or I want to have it based on the marking, which is this marking, the base marking. I want to kind of see that. So you can see it is showing me Los Angeles compared to overall, and you can see the Los Angeles right now is like all 4. But it could be I could compile all these 4 and see how that KPI is as compared to all 4 locations together. I could remove this and kind of see all 4 locations together as well. So you can see all 4 together is this much. Row count, and Los Angeles is this much. This could be row count. This could be kind of electronic sales. It could be those values, and then I can further use all data versus I can pick that Los Angeles. If I don't mark anything, I don't see that Los Angeles. Now I have Boston. I can see that marking is basically Boston versus my all data. So there is a lot you can do within Spotfire. Again, this is something which is out of box available, and it's something which is by default behavior. By default, whenever you create a new visualization from a single data table, all of them would get the same marking. That's why if you highlight something in one visualization, you will see that showing up in another visualization as well. So this was one of the questions. Yes.
Vishaka, before you move on, can you show them a bunch of cool things about the KPI? So, for example, putting the scales on the spark line and also the action.
So within KPIs, if we go kind of details into the KPIs, you can kind of change these KPI settings here, where you can kind of specify the value y-axis. You can kind of have spark lines. You can kind of add multiple scales, and your KPI can lead to action as well. So by action, you can kind of click here action, and I can set that action. It could trigger a script. It could trigger a function. It could trigger a pages. What I want in this case is the moment I click on that KPI, I want to go to next page, which is the email. So I can add that and click OK. So that means the moment I will click on that KPI, that action would be performed. I will navigate to another page. Now, there are sorting options also. You can sort tiles by another aggregation of your whatever you want to select. Within KPI also, you can limit as subsets. You can show and hide certain items. So these are like, and there could be multiple KPIs. So I have like one, I can add another KPI, which could be not by store location. It could be by gender. So I can add these multiple KPIs and kind of make it as a tiled chart, and where I can have my kind of aggregations at one place, and then I click on that, and then I move to next page, and I see only that subset of data, and then I see details of that data. So by having actions, it means it's not only like you move to next page, you can kind of have other things there as well. So let me close this, and let me kind of click on, so you can see I have this gender. I have the gender classification as well as I have the location tile. I have all those together here at one place. So I have all these here at one point. Now, the moment I will click on this, the female, nothing will happen because this is not one where the action is. So this is another KPI where I have females and males segregated by gender. But here there is no action. But the moment I will click on the store location, you would see it will navigate to the next tab. So you can see the moment I clicked on the location, that action was performed, and I moved to the next page where I navigated to next page. So if I go back, nothing will again happen with the male or female because that KPI is a different KPI. But the moment I click on this location, that's where it kind of would go to the email. So now the next question I have is, we received this as an email. I'm getting this message. The first argument is not a hierarchy, and there is a median of some value over navigate some another column day, comma -3. Is there a better way to see a value from 3 days prior, not looking for a rolling average? Now, the way this navigate period works is you are looking at an aggregation, and you are attaching it to navigate period. So it can navigate to multiple periods. So you don't have to do a rolling average, or you don't have to do an aggregation. You might be simply looking at that, like in this case, it is a day, and then it is -3. Now, these expressions work within visualization. So that's why like I have this bottom visualization where I see month, date joined, and I see median electronics, and I see Jan, Feb, March, April, all those values to be there. Now, instead of using a scan date, what I have done is I have used axis.x. So whatever is creating axis.x, that is this column which I want to navigate. And navigate by month, so because I'm using here month, and go -1 level. So if I change this like custom expression and I say -3, I will be able to pick up -3. So I would be able to see whatever is happening in January. I can see that kind of in April, and that's the way I want it to. I want to go previous period, and in April I want visibility to kind of January. So that's the way you will be able to kind of navigate that. Now instead of month, it could be date joined day. So I could have day of year. Now, in this case, since my expression uses month, day of year is not available, I need to specify that here. So I need to change this month to day of year. So, or if I use year, then I need to have my x-axis pointing to year. So I need, that's something which, so if I'm looking at year and I don't have here each year, I won't be able to see that. So I need to make changes. So I need to pick up that year. Since there is like hardly any data, I won't see anything at that level. So depending on my hierarchy, this would kind of change. It takes its input from the visualization, and based on that, you will be able to navigate. So instead of having that column, it's always kind of preferred whenever you are using custom expressions, you should use axis.x, like indirectly refer to those. So if I change it to kind of week, so again, I don't have week here, so I will have to kind of change that custom expression to week here. So now you can see it is kind of going 3 weeks back. I can change it. If you go to kind of insert a calculated column, or if I here right click and go to custom expression, I want to know more about these over functions. So I have these over functions, and one of the over functions is navigate period. Allows you to specify your own node navigation. It has 4 arguments. We saw only 3 because 4th is optional. Argument 1 is a hierarchy to navigate. So in a custom expression, you always provide that hierarchy indirectly by saying axis.x. Argument 2 is a string value specifying the level in the hierarchy that you should navigate up to. So it's a string. So this is a common kind of mistake which I see, because it's a string and it says which level in that hierarchy you want to go to, week level or whatever level, and that level should exist. Argument 3 is an integer specifying number of steps to move sideways, forward, backward. So that is argument 4 is optional and determines the level in the hierarchy to move down. So we saw only one level, like we saw week. I could kind of create a multi-level hierarchy and then say, oh, go up, down 1 level, go down 2 levels. So that's why the argument 4 is optional. So in this case, if I say 2, there are no down 2 levels. So this would not work because there is no 2 levels down existing. But if that was existing, I would be able to kind of specify that as well. So this is something which is not that straightforward to use, but it kind of helps. It kind of is very handy when it comes to kind of navigating a hierarchy and having calculations where you want to compare this month versus some previous 3 months or something like that, where you want to navigate or go down. So it's usually used not individually, but in line with other expressions. So I would definitely love to see a use case where you are kind of using this navigate period and where you want to see 3 days prior. So that would be quite helpful if you can kind of provide those details as well. Another thing I want to show while we are here is that there are a lot of out-of-box aggregations. say, for example, you can see difference. You can see year-to-date total, change relative to start. When you click on those expressions, they kind of use, they have this expression here where they say they use category index.x. That is another way by which we can kind of navigate. Again, that takes its input from visualization. So it's mostly in custom expressions, these calculations are used. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. So then there is another question. In addition to this, we had another email in the same thread we had about the forest package. So we will be taking up that in our next Spotfire session, where because for some questions it takes time to create a setup. So we will be kind of taking that and showing how we can kind of solve that using R&R package in kind of next Spotfire session. So let me go to another question.
I just want to add a line about that, which was basically about package compatibility with TERR. So we do our best, our engineering team does our best to ensure that everything available within CRAN is fully and mostly compatible with TERR. But if you ever find something that's not working as expected, please report it to us, please report it to support, and it gets added to enhancements almost immediately. Having said that, sometimes certain packages are not compatible, but packages that are built on top of them or sister packages are compatible. So over here, it was a question about forecast. There's also another package called Prophet. There are a few packages that do forecast. So it might also be worthy to go ahead and check out those.
We have both these packages, Forecast and Prophet. They don't work with TERR, so both of them are kind of submitted as an enhancement request. But there is a workaround where you can use R&R to kind of use the local R Studio to kind of execute those. So we will have a kind of a demo how to kind of go about that in our next Dr. Spotfire session. But right now, both the Prophet and the Forecast package, they are part of our enhancement request. So there are certain functions within those packages which do not work, and it's kind of a known issue, and they are already part of our enhancement request.
Okay. Vishaka, there's also a comment that goes like in the previous question, hierarchy X is not available in calculated column.
Yes, that's why the reason I said this is something which is more specific to custom expressions. So when I go back here, all these here expressions are custom expressions. These are not something where they will work with calculated columns, because the way over works in calculated columns is entirely different than how over works in a custom expression. To give you a simple example is like if I want to insert a calculated column, I want to kind of create electronics total purchases. So I want to say sum electronics, and I will use over in a calculated column. There what I do is I use over, and I can say give me total electronics by each gender. So it will give me two values, one for males, another for females. It is basically acting as a grouping variable. So in a calculated column, it is acting as a grouping variable, simply like an SQL query where I group by something and I'm able to see two values. That's the way over is expected to work in a calculated column. Whereas in a custom expression, that grouping of data is already done by plot properties. So if I create a visualization, I say, give me gender. So what I'm looking at is if I'm looking at electronics purchases, this is already done by a plot property called X. So it's some electronics by each gender. So that grouping is already done by some plot property, maybe x-axis, maybe I may not use x-axis, I may use color by gender. So that grouping is already done here. what I can do here is when I use over, I make it look beyond my group. So I can say these are the data slices. When I use over in custom expression, that's where it is used to look beyond your existing data slice. So that's why I do rolling averages. You can see last periods, you can see next period. And that's the reason you don't refer columns directly, you refer them indirectly, because that makes it possible to kind of change that plot property. Now it's by gender, then it could be by location. So we have a full kind of course called SP141, which kind of goes into details about how over can be used in calculated columns, and how over can be used in custom expressions, where you can use combination of both. So that kind of course goes into details. So DJ, if you can provide them the link of SP141, that would be the course which kind of goes into details about over, but this is a known behavior. There are people who have used next periods or last periods with over. So there are some use cases where they have used those. They work, but it's not something where we kind of recommend using, because not all use cases, and it again depends on the kind of data set you have. Say, for example, in this data set, I don't have anything as row ID or some kind of identifier which says this is first row, this is second row. For me, if I sort it by store number, that's where it becomes first or second row. I sort it by date join, that becomes my identifier. But it's possible that you have a fixed data set where you have certain identifiers. Then your next and previous is kind of defined based on that identifier. Here, every time I can change which is my next and which is my previous. So it does not make sense in a calculated column, and I could add any kind of hierarchy. So again, that kind of does not define it. But in a custom expression, I have my plot properties defining everything for me, and then I can use over to navigate to previous period or to navigate to next period. So then I have next question is value for another row. So this question has been answered already, and there has been kind of discussion, but still I would kind of want to kind of discuss this question. I'm attempting to reference a value in another row for a particular column of data in Spotfire. As an example, I would like to reference sales month, where quantity of sales of bronze widget was equal to gold widgets. I have included a column to show data I need, and that's the column I have added here. So I have just copy-pasted that from the clipboard. Now, I need to accomplish this with an expression without using script or inserting another table. I tried following another over functions, but so far not successful. Now, there is a solution to this kind of problem, which is like more clean solution, because what we do is instead of you kind of use the Spotfire expression language, where you kind of add that column by insert columns. So you are kind of inserting columns from another where that can be the same table itself also, where you can use this as matching cumulative gold widgets to cumulative bronze widget, and then you have a join, and then you kind of have empty values equal to no, and you can do that. So that is this insert column. I could not only insert column from that table, I could use the same table to insert column, and that way I could perform some joins, and that would be one way. So this is a solution which has been discussed already, but I'm not talking about this solution. I am more concentrating on value in another row. So what I want to show is a function. So if I go here, if I say insert calculated column, and I pick this data table, so this is my data table, and there is a function called value for max and value for min. So these are two functions which I usually see they are kind of underutilized. So what this function means, it returns the value of column 2 for the maximum value of column 1. So if I want to know what is the customer ID, which is responsible for maximum sales in electronics. So if in my previous data I had electronic sales, I want to know the customer ID. So I will put electronics here, and then I would say, okay, give me the customer ID as an output, and I would get the value for max. same other way around. If I have min, I would get a value for min. So that's a common use case or a common function where this is used. Now, what I have done is, if I go to edit column properties, what I have done is I have created this expression which uses this value for max. So let me show you what this expression does. It, instead of directly giving the column, I am creating a flag. I am saying whenever cumulative bronze widgets is equal to gold widgets, call it 1. That flag is 1. Otherwise, call it 0. So that's the question. Whenever those sales are equal, I need to flag those. So those are the sales month that needs to be flagged. This is where they were equal. So that flag is this. I'm not adding it as another column. I'm just keeping it there as a temporary calculation. And I'm using value for max. So I'm nesting this here with value for max because I know now my max is going to be 1. And I'm only interested in the flag where it is 1, where those are matching, the bronze widgets are matching to the gold widget. Give me the sales month for that. Now, if I go here and I see my columns, I have this expression column here, and I have this expression because I can see in this data, it's only this month where they were matching. So they were 3, and that's the only month where they were matching. That is why you can see I have only that month here as part of the expression. But if there were multiple months, I could see that also. It doesn't look like that you just want to pick a month. There seems to be a further calculation. So this is like an example I wanted to show. But usually for these kind of calculations, it's good to kind of share them with the help of a DXP file where we know what is the next step, because that next step changes a lot into the calculation. So what is required? Is it required only this month or after this month? Is the requirement that, okay, up to this, it was this month where it became equal. Maybe after this, I want to see the next month where it became equal. It's possible that the calculation may be requiring that. Then I might have to think it in a different way. But I wanted to kind of use this as an opportunity to share that there is something called as value for min and value for max, which can be directly used to show a value for another row column based on something else. But with help of flags or with help of some nested calculations, there are multiple uses for that calculation. Next, we will kind of, I will share with you a new template which we have just released, which is the environmental variable display of TIBCO Enterprise runtime for R data in TIBCO Spotfire. This is like a common question where you want to know what are your packages, what version of TERR you are using, what is the location of your TERR engine in use, what is the list of all visible installed packages, their version numbers, their locations, because we just know that there are certain versions which are compatible, there are certain which are not, and this particular has been released just I think yesterday, and here you can download that zip file. I have already kind of downloaded this zip file, and I have already that DXP file here. So you can see this is the display TERR environment variables. So this kind of shows a TERR data function and returns and displays several TERR environmental variables of interest. So if I click on refresh, it kind of shows these are the on the system where I am right now. These are the packages. These are the locally installed packages. So I have these packages as installed. I can always go to TERR tools. I can always see and you can see this is the same path which is here mentioned as my, and I can see I'm using 4.2 version. And I have like these 2 TERR installations, and it kind of shows me both of them. And then if I go to package management and I load any package, so let's say we pick up any package. So for example, I'm picking up ACA package and I'm installing it. So I use this package management to install a package, and you can see right now it's not showing up. And the moment I will refresh TERR environment information, you can see the package we just installed right now. You can see that kind of updating here, and I have a nice table. And it can further lead to comparison between, okay, are the packages, the versions, and where those packages are. It kind of gives you that. It kind of tells me about my R home, my TERR version. Again, it has been created using data functions only. And if we take a closer look at that data function, this is the data function, and if you look at the parameters, you don't provide it any input parameters, but it kind of gives you some values and some tables where it stores them within Spotfire, your installed packages and your kind of paths. All those are kind of stored as properties, and which can further kind of like this library path, this R home, this TERR version. It uses those kind of property names to store those, which can be further used to kind of, it would be a good way to start whenever you are creating your data functions. And if we go into the script, my colleague Patil has created this script, and you already saw him in one of the featured, but that was more like about geoanalytics. We will sure have him in future as well to talk more about R packages or data functions. So this is where he uses the function where you can collapse together into single string to return to Spotfire. This is where he can kind of get the installed packages. So this is the code which is used to kind of get that information. And this is it's available on our community exchange, and feel free to download it, feel free to kind of use it. And what I would request is I would like you to kind of once you download it, once you kind of use it, do kind of provide a review. Those are quite helpful for kind of not only enhancing this particular template, that there could be some more additions, or this is something which you liked. They are the ones which we kind of carefully observe and go through so that we can provide new templates, we can provide new community articles, and that could be more useful to our customers. So do kind of download this template, try it out. It's a very simple, small data function which you can use, and it could be quite handy for many of your works. And then you can go here, log in, and provide templates, and also provide us feedback on how we can, what are the things you would like to see here. So there is a huge, once again, there is a huge bunch of exchange where there's a huge bunch of these templates which we kind of provide not only for Spotfire but for other products as well. So you can kind of filter it to only Spotfire, or you can look at other products as well, and these can be downloaded and you can kind of view them, reuse them, so they will always be with a data function or a DXP file, and these are some of the ones which have been recently kind of published, and we will look forward for your review on these so that we can keep on adding more and more. So that will be all for today's session. Do we have any other questions?
No, but I just wanted to make a quick comment. So throughout our session, as and when topics come up, we keep posting a lot of resources on the chat. So make sure you're monitoring the chat and picking up any of the links that you find useful. Next session, we'll have a featured session for R&R, but what we would also like you to look into is extending Spotfire. We're putting up a bunch of Python scripts that directly interact and utilize the APIs available, and we'd love for you to try them and also tell us if you'd like any further utility. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.